Um, I found a few things here that I think will be really helpful to you for those of you that are looking for jobs. So I'm going to post this to Blackboard, but it's basically a guide that teaches you how, or samples of a bunch of different things you can write. I wish I wish we were having enough time for me to teach you more things, such as once you get the job, how do you negotiate a salary, right? I wish somebody taught me that before I actually look for employment. But at least you can read some of these things and get some ideas. But one thing that I do want to do here is I want to go through just a few examples with you guys um, that you can so we can kind of critique as far as what we discuss when it comes to the letter, right? For a cover letter for a job. So one of them that I wanted to discuss was this one here. Um, so this is for medium level experience, right? And this is for somebody who is looking for example, like for cosmetology position. So just do me a favor, go ahead, take a few minutes and just read through that, and then we'll discuss it together as a class. Okay, so go ahead and take a minute to go ahead and read through that, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, was that enough time? If you need more time, can you just put more time in the chat? Okay, seems like everybody's good. Amanda, yes, we will, and I'll talk about that at the end. Okay, so looking at this, right? What do y'all think? Any general comments on? Because let's go through paragraph by paragraph, and then we can give some general comments. Because if you remember, there were some key things that a cover letter should incorporate in each paragraph, right? And then there's also certain formatting that we need to talk about here. So one thing here is, let's take a look at this. Let's see how um, we have this. Notice this format right here, right? And then the date is over here. Is this correct? Is this the way this should be? No, Andrew, what is the biggest issue here?
What do you mean? Like the date, or what do you mean?
Very good. Yeah, the date, right? Yeah. What do you see is wrong with the date?
I don't think it's formatted right as to like why would you put it in the middle?
Very good. right? Yeah, so thank you, Andrew. So yeah, so this should be off to the side, right? Along with the way that we discussed in the PowerPoint, right? Now this other portion is correct, right? Where it has the contact information, who you're addressing, and dear Miss Milborn, right? So that part's still good. All right, so now let's look at this first paragraph here for the cover letter. And it says, I saw your flyer at Lafayette Beauty Academy for the cosmetologist position, and I would like to speak with you about the job. My strong work ethic and solid teamwork skills will make me a valuable member of your staff. In addition, my experience at the J.C. Penney salon will allow me to start work with you immediately without much training. I'm an Indiana State licensed cosmetologist, and I really enjoy working with people in a salon environment. All right. So anybody would like to unmute and tell me what they think about that first paragraph? Does it cover a lot of the things that we said were needed? Or what was your general impression? Anybody? Don't be shy.
Isn't it just like a repeat of the resume, like not really explaining anything beyond?
Okay.
But
So you think a little bit too much of a repeat? Anybody else? All right, let me try to help gear you guys, right? So remember for the introductory paragraph, the first paragraph, what we had to do here was introduce ourselves, right? Make sure that they know who we are. The second thing was to give them a little brief information about how they heard about the position. Another thing is to explain what would make you competitive or at least bring you to the forefront of the application process. Um, and the other thing also is that we want this paragraph to be relatively short. Okay, so compared to the others. Now, with that said, now give me some feedback. I kind of remind you of the protocols. Anybody have some feedback on what they general think about this? Go ahead, Samuel.
I was thinking that I thought it was beneficial that they actually gave the license number.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so they can kind of the reviewer, right, or the person who's reviewing the applications can go and confirm that they are actually a licensed cosmetologist, right? So good. Anybody else? Go ahead, Alan.
I don't think they properly introduced themselves in the introductory paragraph.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that part is lacking, right? They didn't really introduce themselves as far as, at least not directly, right? Anybody else? Okay. So with that said, but they do certain things that, cross the checklist on certain things. We talked about what they didn't do, um, and but here's one aspect. They say, "I saw your flyer," so they at least bring attention to the reader of where they saw the job application. Remember, there's some cases where you might actually hear it from a friend, so you might want to mention that person's name if they're a favorable reputation within the company. And then they go to say, my strong work ethic, solid teamwork skills will make me a valuable member of your staff. So they're already starting to sell themselves. Although that sentence is a little general, the next sentence kind of makes it a little bit more impressive, where it says, my experience at JCPenney Salon will allow me to start work with you immediately without much training. So for an employer who's looking for somebody who can kind of hit the ground running, they're definitely kind of setting themselves apart from potential other applicants, right? So, yeah, some components were addressed in that paragraph, but there's still room for improvement. I agree with you guys. Okay, so then let's look at this paragraph here. A salon assistant and receptionist as a salon assistant receptionist at the JCPenney salon at Chippenham Mall. I gain experience working in salon by assisting cosmetologists in washing hair, cleaning, tracking inventory. When working as a receptionist, I perform points of sales transactions and help customers schedule appointments. During my training at Lafayette Beauty Academy, I acquired the skills necessary to work as a licensed cosmetologist, maintained an excellent attendance record, and scored high on all tests. I believe all these experiences will enable me to begin work in your salon without much training. All right, what do y'all think? Go ahead, Christian.
So in that one sentence, I believe it's the second one, there's an English error. They didn't say comma and tracking inventory.
Very good. I'm glad you caught it. Yeah, good job. All right. Anybody else? Mary, did you want to unmute?
I felt like she did highlight some of the skills that might be beneficial to this company or to the job that she's seeking a position for.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, right? Because she's talking about washing hair, cleaning, tracking inventory. She's talking about sales transactions. What this tells me is that all of these duties were described in the job description, right? And remember that it has your cover letter should match the job description. So what this is telling me is that this is what they were asking for, people that can do these type of things or have experience doing these type of things in the job description. So she's kind of pulling those in. So I do think I agree with Mary. She does do a pretty good job of that. Anybody else? Okay, so with that said, I noticed that she keeps hitting this without much training, right? So to me, this is her selling point. This is what's going to make her a more competitive applicant than others. And I think she does a good job of reinforcing that. All right, let's look at the next paragraph here. As a licensed cosmetologist, I can clean, sterilize, and disinfect areas and equipment. I can order, receive, inspect, and store equipment, merchandise, and supplies. In addition, I can perform manicures and makeup applications and give scalp treatments and shampoos, as well as cut, shape, style, tint, rinse, dye clients' hair according to the existing cosmetology practices. Lastly, I can give permanents and work on a variety of synthetic and human wigs. So I think this paragraph probably needs less discussion here. This is still continuing her qualifications, right? Again, and we hit that a lot in the cover letter. What are your qualifications? What are your skills that you can bring to the job? And I do think she does that very well in this one. All right, so last one here. I'm looking forward to meeting with you about your cosmetologist position. I am sure that my strong work ethic and experience can help your salon maintain a high level of service. If you have any questions, please call me at blank. For your reference, I have included my resume. Thank you for your time to review my documents. What do you think about that last paragraph? Short and sweet, need to work. What do you think? Go ahead, Dallas. Go ahead, Dallas. Maybe you're having some trouble with your mic because I can't hear you. Mic isn't working. That's okay. Did you want to put something in the comment section and I can read it? All right. So while he's working on that, yeah, in general, that last graph is pretty short and sweet. I think it could use some improvement. I mean, because we're talking about some work ethic stuff like this, but we didn't really talk too much about the work ethic within the whole paragraph, right? Saying you have strong work ethic is different from demonstrating on how you have that, right? So again, it's just some rooms for some improvement, but all in all, not too bad, right? Not too bad. All right, so let's try another one. Go ahead, Mary.
So for the cover letter that you want us to turn in, do we pick, like if we don't know what job we want to apply for, do we pick one, that's existing out there and kind of gear it towards that?
That's a great question, yes, and that's what I want you to do. I want this to be applicable. And so I want you to go and find a job that you would be interested in applying for. More specifically, I want you to, because I want you to gear it towards that, and I want you to attach the job description that you're going to be applying to, if you decide to do a cover letter, to your cover letter so I can tell you exactly if it fits that job description. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, I'm going to assume that's a yes. Go ahead, and Christian, do you have a question?
Yes. So for the last one, or that last paragraph, could she have made it better by showing initiative and saying that she would call them back by a certain date?
Yeah, and again, this really depends on the personality, right? Your personality. By that, what I mean is, um, remember, you should really know the culture of who you're applying to, right? If you know, have an impression that you know that they would respect that type of thing, then yeah, I think that's stronger. And honestly, me, this is just my personality. I would include that, right? I said, thank you so much for the opportunity to apply and for evaluating me. I'll be happy to check on my application in 2 weeks, to check the status of my application in 2 weeks in case you have any further questions. I think that's completely valid, right? And I also think that if you're going to say that, then you better do it, right? Because if you don't do it, then that also shows that you don't follow through. So to your question, Christian, yes, I do think that that would have made it stronger. Mhm. All right, so now here's another one that it's specifically geared towards military veterans, but I think it's a really good example. So let's go ahead and take a read that one. Take a minute to read that one. All right. If you need more time, can you put more time in the chat window? All right, so let's go ahead and tackle this. So if we look at this, the way this is formatted here, a much better format that we can see here, right? We have the date, right? We have the date, right, and so forth. Notice that they don't know exactly, and probably the information wasn't on the job description about who was the direct person of contact, so they just simply put human resources, which is acceptable, right? But if they do have a person of contact on the job description, make sure to include that position and that person's name. All right. So with that said, it says, Dear Human Resources, and let's go paragraph by paragraph. I read on your website on July 19, 2009, that Subaru of Indiana Motive Incorporation is seeking a logistics and supply manager for your Lafayette plant, and I would like to meet with someone in Human Resources about this position. My strong work ethic and solid teamwork skills developed during my 8 years in U.S. Army make me a good match for SIA. My distribution coordination with the Six Sigma strategies, as well as my training and leadership abilities, will help STA achieve its just-in-time production goals. What do y'all think? What do y'all think of this first paragraph? Go ahead, Andrew.
I honestly think it was to the point. It got our attention. He introduced himself and explained like the purpose of the letter.
Yeah, I agree. Good. Anybody else have comments? Go ahead, Dallas.
All right, got my mic working now.
Great.
Yes, I agree that as a he, Elizabeth would be very good.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
Yes, my bad.
I thought it was really, really well, well typed. She mentioned that like achieve its just-in-time production goals, which I guess is like a mission statement for the company, I would assume, because it's in quotes.
Awesome.
Um, she also mentions Six Sigma strategies, which I didn't understand, so I do Google it. It's like a problem-solving, process improvement kind of technique. So it shows that she's skilled in that instance, and it also says she worked in the army, so hardcore work ethic and teamwork skills. So very good job of selling herself.
Yeah, I think Dallas and Andrew kind of hit them all the points here, right? Um, yeah, in this case, rather than just saying strong work ethic and teamwork, we know that they're in the U.S. Army, which this is in itself is going to require those skills, right? So there's demonstration there. Dallas hit it very perfectly here. It says achieve its just-in-time production goals. Yeah, so this must be part of their ultimate vision or goals here for the thing. So they're hitting that there. So I think, and then Andrew mentioned that he did a pretty good job of introducing himself, right, and explaining what was the purpose of the letter and the position that he's applying to. So yeah, I think this is a very, very clean, very good introductory paragraph. So good. All right, so let's think about this next one here. For the past 4 years, I have been working as a logistics coordinator for the U.S. Army. In this position, I coordinated a complex logistics network and distributed a wide range of supplies to multiple countries. I also trained and worked with 10-person staff in cutting-edge logistics tracking technology to meet contract and government needs. During my time as a coordinator, my team achieved 96.4% delivery rate with zero loss, saving 2.3 million over a 1-year period. All right, what do y'all think? Go ahead, Dallas.
Again, really, really excellent. Mentioned the like stats for her previous job. 96.4%, I assume is relatively high. She also mentioned that she worked with a 10-person staff for reference, so that way like they know like if she was put in a place with larger people, they know like, oh, okay, she's only been with 10 people. And then she also mentioned that she's worked in a relevant field in the Army, not only selling herself with the teamwork and ethic from the Army, but also she was in a relevant position during her time serving.
Yeah, very good, very good. Ryland, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think she does a good job at showing her or explaining her skills rather than just listing them off.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really attractive when it's like that.
Good, very good. Mary, do you want to add?
I just overall agree with what they've been saying. I mean, she seems very strong, like determined in these. I just feel like if I were looking at this, I'd be like, "You're hired." Sorry, my dog.
That's okay. So yeah, I agree with all of your statements, right? I think this is a prime example of where where she's showing what she can bring to the table, mainly through her past experiences, right? But she's doing a great job of selling herself. I mean, and she's giving examples. She's not just saying, "Oh, I'm productive, I'm a team worker." No, she's saying, "I work with a 10-person staff and logistics training. I was able to achieve 96.4% delivery with zero loss, and I was able to save 2.3 million. I mean, as an employer, I'm just like, wow, okay, these are specific examples, right? So yeah, I agree with you guys. A strong, strong second paragraph. All right, here we go again. For the first 4 years of my service in the U.S. Army, I worked as a logistics support specialist and supported a logistics network while contributing 11 million petroleum products per month. As a logistics support specialist, I monitored quality control systems to ensure 94.3 average delivery rate, savings of about 350,000. I received honorable discharge in 2009 and have been enrolled at an Ivy Tech community college since then, taking courses in business administration and logistics management. Right? So I don't think this needs too much more discussion, more than to say that they continue to bring, what skills and now education that they have to the table, right? And talking about, monitoring control systems. This is telling me that these type of things that they were looking for was in the job description. They were looking for teamwork. They were looking for these particular type of skills, management skills, right? So I think they do a good job here. All right, last paragraph. I am looking forward to meeting with you and to interview for the logistics and supply manager position. I am sure that my strong work ethic, logistics experience, and training in Six Sigma can help SIA maintain a high level of supply and distribution quality. If you have any questions, please call me at this. For your reference, I have included my resume. I thank you for taking the time to review my documents. So, what do you think about the closing? Anybody? All
I
right,
think she summarizes the job description and like the ending remark really good.
yeah,
Does that
I
make
think
sense?
I think it does a good job, right, of kind of summarizing their overall qualities, bringing in the job description, like Andrew said, and it's short and sweet, right? The next paragraph shouldn't be too long here, right? All right. So if I missed anybody, I hope I didn't miss anybody that wanted to make comments. You're free to make comments now if you want to. All right, cool. So we went over 2 examples. I'm going to upload this whole document to Blackboard so that you have multiple examples, right? Ultimately, you guys, if you choose to do a cover letter for a job rather than a personal statement or a for grad school or pre-health profession, then you can choose to do the cover letter, right? So that's your choice. But again, every component has certain criteria that we're looking for. Okay. All right. So, are there any questions about this assignment in general before we move on to today's lecture, which is how to request a letter of recommendation? Any questions about the assignments in general? No? All right, cool. Go ahead, Amanda.
You said you were gonna go over, are we gonna like do the one-on-one going over our CV and our resumes before we turn in the final drafts?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give y'all feedback on your rough drafts, and I'll email those to you beforehand, right? And if you feel that, and the reason I'm only doing this is because the resumes are very short and there's not much to really discuss. If you feel that you have enough information based off my comments, then you can make your revisions, then go for it. If you prefer a one-on-one meeting, we can always schedule that. So I'll leave that to you. Okay. But I will be returning your comments, and you'll get an email from me with your rough drafts by email. So be expecting those later today. Okay. I'm almost done with those. All right. So, so let's go ahead with today's lecture, which is we are going to talk about, oops, not what I wanted to do. Cancel. Requesting a letter of recommendation, right? So this is what we're going to talk about here. I didn't normally teach this. I didn't normally teach this, and then I found out that it's very much necessary. As, oops, that's not what I want to do. Stop that. Okay, is that working? Okay, so I found that it was necessary for me to teach students to do this. And again, I don't blame you guys because you're never really taught how to ask anybody, whether it be a previous employer or your professor, for a letter of recommendation. And there are certain things that you want to do and things that you don't want to do. Here is my main motivation. I'm going to share this with you. Here's my main motivation for teaching you this. Here is a sample that I got from a student of a request. So let's go ahead and read that. Right. Didn't really take too long to read it, I don't think. What are your general impressions? Dallas says 10 out of 10. Well, Dallas, you need to pay very close attention to this lecture today. Anybody like to make some general comments about this? I laughed, I cried, it was great. Well, y'all are scaring me a little bit. Anybody else want to make some comments about this? Okay. So if we look at this, it says, go ahead, Mary.
I feel like this person just sat down, wrote it in 5 seconds, and then just sent it off to you. That's what like didn't take time to revise anything, didn't take time to put any effort into it. That's what it seems like.
Right. See, and here's the thing, guys. Obviously, I picked one of the worst examples I've ever gotten for somebody to request a letter of recommendation, to make a point here. But I mean, come on. I mean, this is first off, little I. I took the OChem 1 lecture. If you mind, can you write down capital W not spelled correctly letter for me? And this is, I promise you, this is not fake. I got this, and I get requests like this, and this is just not appropriate. If somebody were to send this to anybody, you can imagine what their response is going to be, right? Their response is going to be, no, I'm not going to. This is, if you're not taking the time to write me a decent request, why would I take the time to write you a letter, right? So what we're going to talk about today is how you should do this appropriately, okay? So let's go ahead and tackle this now. And I know that many are like, really, Dr. Ladd, I think I know how to ask for a letter of rec. You might be surprised on some do's and don'ts when it comes to this, right? Why is this taking so long? Chingadas. Give me a quick minute. You are not going to do this. You will share. Hold on, guys. All right. So, generals, here's the thing. Ask somebody who knows you well. All right. Do not assume that. Don't ask somebody who doesn't know you very well. For example, I get a lot of students who ask me for letters of recommendation. And let's be honest, I get a lot of requests, but it's reasonable for me because I teach 600 students a semester, which averages to about 1,500 students a year, right? So it's not unknown that I will get a lot of requests. But with that said, I do not write a letter for everybody, because I'm very honest when it comes to whether I feel like I can write them a letter. And it has to be, do I know them well, right? Have I had conversations with them? Can I tell by those conversations how they think, their work ethic? The better I know them, the better I can write a letter for them. But if all I know is if I get an email and first thing is I don't recognize the name of the person who sent it to me, that right off is a bad sign because that means that I don't know the person very well. But if I do know the name of the person, but the only thing I can comment on is that they did well in my class. In other words, they got the highest score in my class, but I've never once had a single conversation with that person. I would still decline writing that letter because I don't know the person very well, right? So you want to ask somebody who does know you well, who can comment to some of the strengths that the application is looking for. The other thing is you want to ask early. And the reason I say that is because if a professor is going to take time to write you a letter of recommendation, a quality letter, it's going to take us time to write it. So my rule is you need to at least tell me a month before it's due, right? Because I've had sometimes where people, can you write me a letter back? I said, when is it due? Tomorrow. It's like, no, I can't. I used to when I was very first started off as faculty. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And now I'm just like, no, I can't. There's just too many things going on for me to finish this over in a day, right? So you want to at least give us a month to write this. If you can, it'd be best to ask personally, means in person, but it's not a requirement. I mean, there's nothing. Realize that faculty or previous employers might be very busy. It might be hard to track down. So it might be best to even send them an email. That's not a bad thing. When you ask for a letter of recommendation, make sure that you give them the information that they're going to need to make their decision. Things like, what is it you're applying for? Why is it that you're asking them? What do you want them to comment about? When is it due? How to submit it, right? These type of things. I really prefer when a student says, if you agree, it won't be due until so-and-so, because right then and there I can tell them, okay, I have time to do this. But in a lot of cases, now I've become really hesitant because in some cases I've said, sure, I'll do it. okay, great, it's due in 3 days. I was like, wait. So now I'll always ask. I'll be like, okay, when does this due? Before I say yes or no, right? So just include that information from the get-go. The other thing is to waive your right to read the letter. Very common for the applications for graduate school, medical school. Check that box where you waive the right to read the letter. In fact, that's one of my requirements. I will not write a letter unless the students waive the right to read it. And the reason for that is because if you really want the letter to be sincere and you want the committee to take it seriously, it looks better if you waive the right. That means that the professor or whoever you're asking to write it was able to give their honest feedback to the reviewer, and that's what they're looking for, right? And here's the thing: unless I don't know very many people who would agree to write a letter if they're gonna tear you apart, right? If they're just gonna write all these bad things. If they are, then hopefully you know that person already doesn't have a good opinion of you, and you didn't ask them in the first place, right? So I still think it's good to make sure you waive your right to read that letter. The other thing is when you're done, send a thank you note, right? Don't be rude. It takes them time to write these things, right? So, I mean, I've had times where I wrote a letter for some students for multiple different applications, and at the end, I didn't even know what happened. Like, I didn't know, did they get in? I didn't even know. It was just like, okay, right? So, Mary, you have a question? Go ahead.
For applications, you know how they ask you for 2 or 3 letters of recommendation. Would it be weird or not weird, but is it common to ask? So I work in a lab and I work under like a grad student. Would it be okay to ask that grad student for a letter of recommendation?
Great question. I'm really glad you asked that question. I would not ask grad students, right? The reason being is it's no disrespect to that grad student, even though that grad student might know you better than the professor that you're working in their lab. But when a review committee looks at this and says, um, well, this is written by a grad student, what that is telling them is that they couldn't get the professor to write them a letter, right? And that will not look good. So you want to make sure that the person that you're getting a letter from is somebody who is a professional with an already established career, right? But that's a great question, Mary, because had that happen, where some of my TAs have been asked to write letters, and I reach out to the students saying, you might want to consider asking a professor. Nothing against your TA, they're great, but it's just not going to look good on your application. When I was a grad student, I had people, when I was a teaching assistant, I had people ask me to write letters, and I had to tell them that I couldn't. They wouldn't be a best for their application. So that's a great question. Were there other questions? I wonder if I missed any. No? Okay. Go ahead, Samuel.
For asking for the letter of recommendation, who can we not ask to write one?
Well, never ask a family member or a friend, right? If you are going to ask a friend, well, hopefully they have a career that's relevant to what you're applying to, and then I would make sure that there's no mention of the job, right? But never ask a family member or a friend because the first question is, if I call that reference up, it's like, so how do you know so and so? And say, oh, they're my friend. I'm being like, really? So you've never actually worked together on anything? Yeah, that right off the bat's not going to work well, right? You want to either that or a professor. You want to ask a professor, but I wouldn't ask a professor who doesn't know you. In other words, if you can't walk into their office and they can't say, "Hi, Samuel, how's it going?" Then that right off the bat is probably not the best person to ask if they can't do that, right? That they know you right off the bat and they know something about you and especially your performance in the class. Does that answer your question, Samuel?
Yeah, but I also had like one extra thing for it. So, I worked with one of the club sports on campus. Would I be able to ask like the president, or would I have to ask like directly the recreational center?
So the president of what exactly?
The club Quidditch team on campus.
Is it a student organization that's a president?
Yeah, it's a student organization.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. So again, I would ask people that have a professional career established, right? getting it from a peer student or something like this is just not going to look good on your application. Now, with other things mentioned here too, it depends on what you're applying to, right? If you're thinking about medical school, then you think about, professors and healthcare professionals that can attest to your skills and interests. If you're thinking about a job, then you want to think about previous employers, right? That can again can validate your qualifications. Israel, you have a question?
Yes, could you hear me?
Yes.
So what about where I work, I have both residents and fellows that work with
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
I'm not asking any of the residents just because they're not like board certified in anything, but I'm asking some of the fellows because most of them are like board certified in already like internal medicine or emergency medicine. But like it's kind of hard since I work overnights to get an attending. So I'm just going for, well, what would you say about the fellows?
So I think the fellows are good recommendations to have if they can speak directly to your qualifications, right? And your interactions with them. I think that's good because again, they already have the degree, right? And like you said, they're board certified. So I think that they again, if they can write a strong letter that explains, your work ethic, your skills, your potential to do well in medical school, I think those are good letters. Yeah. Anybody
Thank you.
else? You're welcome. Dallas, would you recommend submitting more than one letter? I would recommend submitting as many as they're asking you to. So if they're asking you for 3 letters of recommendation, make sure to hit 3, right? So you should at least do exactly what they're asking you to submit. Yes. Never hit it lower than what they're asking you to. Anybody else? Alan, go ahead.
Some schools, like medical schools, often ask for committee letters.
Right.
What is it with committee letters? Because I feel like they interview you. From what I know at UTSA, the committee and the pre-health department like interviews you, but they don't know you like as much as a professor that you're close to would know you. So how would that look?
Yeah, so the way this works with committee letters is you would still ask your professors for letters of recommendation, and this happens to me quite a bit. And I send my letter to the health professions office at UTSA, and then what they do is they combine all of the letters from the faculty into one big committee letter, right? And they basically say they've demonstrated this based off the comments made by Dr. Aguilar in his letter where he stated blank, right? So these type of things. So what they'll do is they won't solely base it off the interview with you. A lot of cases you still have to get letters from professors, except they kind of bring it all together into one big letter. If personally, and there is no basis for this is just my opinion, so make that very clear. I think it's better to get the letters sent directly from the professors. But like you said, Alan, a lot of medical schools are asking for the committee letters just because it makes it easier for them to evaluate. So basically, my point is make sure you do exactly what the application is asking you to. Does that answer your question, Alan?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? All right. So when it comes to send that thank you note, yeah, send that thank you note. I'm really big on this. I really like it when students come back and tell me, hey, that letter you wrote me, thank you so much. I got in, right? I love that. And you'll see me send you an email, congratulations, and then I'll eventually ask you for my payment, which my payment usually is a picture of you in your lab, these type of things. So, but yeah, so yeah, just be polite here, right? And realize that people are taking their time to do this. So at least send them a thank you note, or at least send them when you get in, let them know the status of that application. No, not 50. It's more like 150. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so choose an appropriate professor, right? Before you choose a professor, ask for the recommendation. Again, does the professor know your name? So like I told Samuel, you know, if the person walks into my office, I should be able to say that person's name right off the top of my head because I've had conversations with them, right? So that would be something. And then the other thing is maybe I know your name, but we've never had a conversation. Yeah, if we've never actually ever had a conversation about something, right? You want to make sure that they've spoken outside of class, relatively about coursework, that's fine, right? But that you hold a conversation with them. Typically, you want to make sure that you ask somebody who you've gotten a B or higher in their class. If you get a C or D, they're not going to be able to comment too much about your scientific inquiry and these type of things. So you want to make sure that that's the case. The best thing to do is a professor that you've taken multiple classes with, right? I've had students who, actually there's only 5, and there used to be a lot more. Oh, I take it back. There's two now. There used to be a lot more students who took every single class that I offered with me, right? So before I taught Organic 1, I taught Organic 2, Organic 1 Labs, Advanced Organic or Organic 3, and then Chemical Writing. So there used to be a lot more students. I think I had a total of like 5 or 7 students that took in every single class with me. But now that I'm teaching biochemistry in the summer, all those students don't qualify. Now I only have like 2 students, right, that have taken every single class with me. But you can imagine that, right? If this student took 6 classes with me, and I know them very well, and they perform very well in these classes, I can speak to so many things. I can speak to their scientific inquiry and organic, their communication skills and scientific writing, their appreciation of biology and chemistry, right? So a lot of different things here. Okay. You want to choose professor who can write a letter that includes. All right. So you want sure that they can give specific examples of your characteristics. Much like these cover letters, you're not going to say, "Oh, I'm hardworking. Oh, I have a strong work ethic." You don't want a letter that says this person's hardworking or strong. No, they need to give specific examples. So, for example, like in you guys here for your communication skills, if I were to say have strong written communication skills, or I can say, as demonstrated by their NIH-style research proposal on the evaluation of blank, right? This was, and I can get into much more specific examples here. Okay. Now, for those of you that are going to a pre-health profession school, I don't know if you've seen this, but this is the guidelines that they send us when writing for a letter of recommendation. So this is what I use to decide whether I can write a strong letter for a student or not. And these are all the comments, the things that they want us to discuss, which is critical thinking, quantitative reasoning, scientific inquiry, written communication, service orientation, social skills, cultural competence, teamwork, oral communication. So now I'm going to teach pro seminar, so that adds another one, right? So that's kind of, wow, that's a lot of classes if somebody takes every single one with me, because then I'd be able to talk about the communication, ethical responsibility, reliability, resilience, these type of things. Now, let's be perfectly honest. It's going to be rare that a professor or somebody will be able to comment on every single one of these things. What the idea here is that if you have 3 letters of recommendation, that when you are picking those 3 people, that those 3 people collectively should be able to comment on all of these things here, right? So for example, let's say that you're choosing Israel. I don't mean to pick on you, but I'm going to pick on you. Israel, let's say that you're choosing 3 people, right? One of them's me. One of them is the fellow, right? That you mentioned, and then the other one, let's say that you volunteered at a nursing home or did some volunteer experience, and there's a coordinator there, right? So there's 3. Well, I would be able to comment about your critical thinking, your quantitative reasoning, your scientific inquiry, your written communication, right? I can even talk about your teamwork because of the way you interact in class. I can talk about your oral communication because of the way you talk, when we ask you to participate in class. I can comment on these things. Though I can make direct comments on those things. I can make indirect comments on your service orientation based off your resume. I can make indirect comments about cultural competence, right? Your ethical responsibility, your reliability. I can indirect comments. Now, there's nothing wrong with indirect comments, but the moment that my letter has more indirect comments than direct comments, then the letter is going to be weaker. And I'm always cautious about that, right? About that balance. Now, so I can comment on those things, and I might not be able to comment so much on ethical responsibility and these type of things. Well, maybe your fellow can, right? Your fellow can talk about your ethical responsibility, your reliability and dependability, your resilience and adaptivity, especially if you work in the ER, these type of things. They will be able to tackle those things. And then maybe with the coordinator for the volunteer, they can talk about your service orientation, your cultural competence, right? And maybe we even overlap on some of these other things. That right there gives a complete picture of that person from multiple different angles. So when you are asking for letters of recommendation, my biggest advice here is to make sure you cover all of these bases among the people that you're asking. Okay? I hope that makes sense to everybody? Okay. All right. Any questions so far before I move on? All right. So then here, prepare your email request early. Send it, I usually say a month, but 5 to 6 weeks before the date is due is great. Even earlier is better. Wait for last minute, right? Again, remember, very busy. And in a lot of cases, I've had to decline just because I wouldn't have had time to write a letter. And I'm not about to write a letter that's going to be rushed, right? Okay, because again, my goal is for you to be successful, and I don't want to write a rush letter. The other thing is the reason why faculty can be very picky about writing letters. And here's the thing, guys, and don't get offended if we say no, right? I mean, I know it's kind of, you get a little like shy about it, but understand that when you ask, you run the risk of saying no. But don't take that as a bad thing. Take that as a good thing, because what they're saying is, I want you to do well. I want you to get in. And unfortunately, my letter is just not going to be as strong as somebody else, right? So don't take that as a bad thing. If anything, I take that as appreciative, saying, oh, thank you so much, because I obviously want to put my best foot forward, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. Don't get your feelings hurt. They're just being honest with you, and that's exactly what you want, okay? Now, so email necessities. Address the letter properly, right? So in the subject line, put recommendation for so-and-so. So we know exactly what it is that we're looking for when we're opening this letter. Make sure to proofread, just like for anything. You want to make sure that you're proofreading because you want to show that you put effort, unlike the example I showed you at the very beginning today, that you put effort into preparing this request. Be professional, right? No emoticons, a ha ha ha, laugh out loud, smiley face. No, right? Be professional. This is a professional request that you're asking for, okay? So then let's go through this paragraph by paragraph here. The first thing is to state what it is and be straight to the point, right? Concise. We're very busy. Tell me exactly what you want. I'm writing to ask if you'd be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me. Great. I already know what you're asking me for. Yeah, I get a lot of emails, and don't get me wrong, I like the nice emails like, you're a great professor. I can see how much work you put into class, and paragraph after paragraph praising me. I'm awesome. You're great. Blah blah blah. By the way, can I have a letter? Right? And I'm just like, oh, I thought this was just a nice email. Now they want something from me, right? No, just right from the beginning, right? I'm asking you for a letter of recommendation. Your name, where do we know you from, right? Is it the school, the major, the course you took with me in the semester? I have some students who come back 2 years later, and I know the person, I just can't remember what semester they told me, right? I took your Organic 2 class in spring of 2017. Great, thank you. Now when I go back and look at my records, I can find it very easily, right? So let us know these type of things. What courses did you take with us? What grades did you get with us? So that again, I don't have to go look it up. I already have, of course I'm going to look it up to confirm, but at least it makes it a little bit easier, right? When deciding whether I'm going to agree or not. What's the letter for, right? Let us know what it's for. And then also, more importantly, when is it due? So all of this should be in the very first paragraph, right? Very first paragraph. All right. Outline your relationship with the professor, right? So this is the part where you're going to tell them, tell a little bit about what your overall goals are and why you're applying to this. And then more specifically, why is it that you're asking this professor to write the letter for you, right? What do you think that this professor what is it about your relationship with this professor that you're asking them to write? Or employer, right? I mean, that's a lot easier. Of previous employers is, well, I'm asking you because you observed me, you were my supervisor for so many years, and observed my direct interactions with customers or whatever it may be, teamwork skills, these type of things. So make sure they understand why is it that you're asking them specifically. All right. Here, the third paragraph is hint. Give a hint to what it is that you want the professor to mention. What personal traits that you want them to consider writing in your letter. For example, you saw all of those qualifications for the pre-health profession, right? So you can say, taking your chemical writing class, I think that you can speak to my written communication, my oral communication, my ability to, these type of things. Let us know what is it specifically that you would like us to highlight in your letter of recommendation. Go ahead, Dallas.
In the first paragraph, you said that you want to keep it professional, but in the second paragraph, you said that you wanted to outline like the relationship you had with the professor. How personal would you get in that paragraph?
So what do you mean? So as far as like when I say your relationship with your professor, I'm talking about like your professional relationship with them. Your interactions with each other. Your conversations that we've had. Maybe about your end goals and these type of things. But I'm not sure I'm understanding your question when you mean as how personal.
Well, like, for some, I have several professors that are like, like almost like family to me. Where
Ah,
I've had them for several years, and they're almost friends.
gotcha. Yeah, and here's the thing, and that can happen. I'm friends with a lot of students that I have had previously that are now graduated, and a lot of them are earning their degrees and stuff. And now our relationship is less formal, right? We joke around. They see a side of me that that you don't typically see when you're in my class, right? Um, and at that point, it's okay to have a little bit of informality, right? I guess this lecture is a little more geared towards the faculty that you are not at that point in your relationship with, right? Where you're not necessarily friends, it's more student professor relationship. Does that make sense, Dallas? All right, cool. All right. Give the details, right? So that's the other thing that I often will have to rebuttal with an email saying, sure, I can consider this, but can you give me some more information, such as, how to submit, when's the deadline? If you already include this in the request, then it makes things a lot easier for us to decide, right? Where does the letter need to go? When do they need it? Are there other forms that need to be filled out, or is it simply a letter? The other thing is, ask the professor if they need anything, like do they need your CV, do they like to see some of your essays, but be very clear on the details of what it is that they would have to do on their end, right? Don't leave them guessing, oh well, I have to do this, do I have to do that, right? Just let them know, and that way they can come to a decision easily for you. Close with the information about how you will follow up, right? So in a lot of cases, in the past, we actually had to mail the letter in. And actually, there's some schools that still want us to mail a letter in, which is kind of, what's the word? Primitive. But if that's the case and you're applying to a program like that, then take the professor a stamped envelope so they don't have to worry about it, right? With everything already filled out, and they all do is put the letter in and put it in the mail, right? But these days, a lot of things are done electronically now by email or submission online. But if that's the case, make sure you do that, right? And then feel free to say that when you need the letter to reinforce again when you need the letter, and then how how you're going to follow up, right? You say, I appreciate that for your consideration, and I can check with you if you agree. I can give you a friendly reminder about the letter 2 weeks before the deadline, something like this, right? There's nothing wrong with that. All right. So thank the professor, whether he or she is willing to write you the letter. So what do I mean by this? Here's an example. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration. I also wanted to extend an additional thank you for the time I spent under your instruction. I really enjoyed your course, and I can't express how much I've taken away from archaeology. Right. So in this case, what you were basically saying is end positively. Right. Now, the other thing that you also want to make sure that you do is you do not want to assume that the professor is going to write it for you. I have had letters, I have had requests where it says, Dr. Lott, I'm asking you to, um, if you can submit a letter of recommendation, you can submit it here and the deadline's here. Thank you for submitting it. I'm like, I never agreed to. Are you asking me or are you telling me, right? So make sure that you really ask them. You're not. Make sure it doesn't come off as if you're telling them to write you a letter, because right off the bat they're going to say no. The other aspect here is to give them an out. In other words, make the professor give them an out. Say, I understand that if you feel that maybe you can't write me a letter, and I appreciate your time and consider it regardless, right? Give them an out, so that way, if they feel that they can't write you a strong letter, that they can tell you. If they feel bad, and not all students, not all professors are like this. So, like I told you, I'm very honest, but some professors might be like, oh, well, I feel bad, and then they're going to write you a mediocre letter. And you don't want to write a mediocre letter just because they're trying to check a box, right? So give them an out, if possible. All right. Don't freeze on me. Froze. Can you still hear me? Can somebody just say yes if you can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So my computer froze. I can hear y'all, but I can't navigate this thing. All right, so then I'm going to do the rest verbally. You can, if you have the slides on Blackboard, the slides are already there. You can download and kind of follow with me. But at least you can still hear me here. At least I think. All right, are we back? Are we back? Okay, one more time, guys. Somebody vocalize. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Alan. All right, so I'm just going to go with it because my thing froze, but continue on looking at the slides. Yeah, if you say that you're going to follow up, right? If you say that, I'll check with you with 2 weeks before the deadline if you choose to do so, make sure you do it, right? I've had cases where I felt awful because I'm usually pretty organized when it comes to my letters of rec. I have deadlines, I have it on my calendar. One time, for some reason, it just erased all the stuff that was on my calendar. So I lost all of them. And if it wasn't for the students who said, just a friendly reminder, I would have forgotten some, right? So if you say you're going to do that, make sure that you do so. Take responsibility for checking the letter as it's been submitted. And you'll notice that I do this quite often. Once I've submitted your letter, what I will do is I will email you and say, I have submitted your letter here, so it's very clear, right? And I said, please check on the status of the letter. At that point, I'm putting it in your ballpark, saying, I've done my part, you go make sure they received it. And if they didn't receive it, you need to let me know so that we can try to organize it, right? But you want to make sure that that you take personal responsibility for making sure that it was submitted correctly, right? And like I said, normally I will tell students, I've submitted a letter here, please check on the status. That's me putting that into your ballpark here, okay? All right, and then finally, okay, this thing now you decided to work. Finally, the last thing again, thank the professor, right? Thank them for their time to write the letter, and be polite also, right? I've had some cases, and one happened last semester, which I was incredibly surprised by, because normally students are very respectful. But there was one case last semester where a student asked me face to face for the letter, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't think I can write you a strong one. I don't know you very well. I can't really speak to a lot of these qualities. And they got really upset. And they said, well, what do you want me to do? Like, tell you my whole life story? I was like, ooh, yeah. Right? Be respectful, right? Be respectful in these type of situations. Because ultimately that's not going to end very favorably in the long run. girlfriend, right? So if they tell you no, then you say thank you. I thank you for considering it. I appreciate your honesty. I really do. And be professional about it. Okay. All right. So guys, my computer still has the circle of the share files has that spinning circle of death. So if you have questions, go ahead and unmute and just ask me the questions. No questions so far? All right. So if there's no questions, this is what the assignment is, right? You need to pick somebody who you're going to write a letter for, and we'll review some samples next class too. But you need to find somebody that you want to request a letter. Sorry, let me rephrase this. Find somebody that you want to request a letter, a former professor, whatever it may be, and you're going to pretend like you're writing it to them, and this is going to be your rough draft, right? And then I will give you critiques on your request. So that way, when you do get ready for application time, you have these things ready to go, right? And again, it would be really nice if all of these assignments are cohesive, right? The resume CV, the personal statement cover letter, the request for references or letters of rec, and then finally the mock interview. So it'd be really nice if all of these are cohesive, because the idea here is to get you ready for your end goal, right? Okay. Go ahead, Alan.
I've shadowed this physician before, and he's already told me. I haven't asked for a letter of recommendation, but he's already told me previously multiple times that whenever I needed a letter, just to let him know. Would I also have to send him a letter like this with all these components, or would it have to be modified since he was the one that offered?
So you would still include these components, right? Just because it's professional and it's respectful, right? But what you can say is, based off our previous conversations, thank you so much for your willingness to write me a letter. I would appreciate, and then you go into the next paragraphs, right? I'm asking you to write me a letter because I feel that you can speak to this and so forth. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes, thank you.
No problem. Alejandro, go ahead.
I also shadowed and volunteered with a physician that offered to write me a letter, but that volunteer and shadowing was done in Mexico. So, what are your opinions about getting a recommendation letter for an international physician?
Just as good as any other place. The reason being is it's not so much who is it's coming from, and it depends sometimes on certain programs, right? But for the most part, for medical school, it doesn't really matter where country they're from or what organization they come from, more than what's their professional status and what can they speak to you about you as an applicant, right? That's important. But that's a great question, because there are certain things, like there are some scholarships. For example, the Goldwater Scholarship, right, which is for undergrads. They'd prefer that, for example, we have some instructors, some professors here that have a PhD and some that do not, right? When it comes to the Goldwater, they do not like letters of recommendations from professors that don't have a PhD. It's a bias that I don't like, but that's how they are, right? So, you want to be careful with those type of things. For NSF, it's even more. What's the word? Hierarchical, I guess, because for NSF, for like a grant type of thing, they do not like letters from people who don't do research, right? If they're strictly teaching, they prefer letters from people who do more research than teaching, right? So those type of things, when we're thinking about scholarships, yes. But when we're thinking about graduate school and pre-health profession, like medical school, dental school, no. I think as long as this person has already established career, has a professional status, and can speak to your attributes, then those letters will be sufficient. Okay. Does that answer your question, Alejandro?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? All right. So if there's no more questions, then be expecting some emails from me with some of your assignments, and then some emails from me so that we can schedule some meetings to discuss some of your future assignments. And I will see you all on Thursday. So have a good one, guys. Oh,
Wait,
Alejandro, you have a question?
Yeah. Are we not meeting with you to talk about the abstract and resume final drafts? Because they're due tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Oh, but we might have to push those back a little. But the abstracts and resume, those will probably be really. What I'll most likely do is send you my comments because they're so short. And if you feel that you want another meeting to go over my comments, then we'll do so. But right now, I'm more concerned about your research plan to schedule meetings, right? But yeah, don't worry about as far as the deadlines. Um, if you haven't gotten my critiques back, then yeah, we're gonna have to push those back. Okay. Good question, Alejandro.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I'll see you. Have a good one. Oh, sorry, Mary. You had a question?
Sorry, I was just being nosy. Did you ever solve your problem with that person coming into your class?
I hope so. I tried something today. Oh, actually, and I think I even put it today in my office hours as a new link. So I had to change all the links. And I didn't have any issues today, so I hope that's solved.
It's just so sad that you have to go to extra links just for
Believe me, yeah, I know.
immature
But
people.
exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay, well, have a good day.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye bye. You're welcome, Israel. Bye, Medulla.